the 5 worst mistakes you can make in door refinishing. First of all, the worst mistake you can make is not having the right tools or knowing the right procedures. Now, because of this, there's all kinds of myths on the internet how to refinish your doors. You see people that have done 1 or 2 doors, or general contractors that really are giving misleading advice. And I want to go through a couple of those right now because they can really mess you up. First of all, you'll see people on the internet that talk about just take a sanding sponge and sand off all the old material and then just brush on some more finish. Well, first of all, a sanding sponge, even a circular sander, a power sander, is not going to get off some of these finishes. They're so hard, and all that finish has to come off to do the job right. So, you know, it takes so much more than just a sanding sponge. The second myth you're going to see on the internet is, well, instead of a sanding sponge, use steel wool. Well, here's the thing. There is a place for steel wool, but it's not on outside wood surfaces. When you use steel wool on outside wood surfaces, what happens is you're never going to get all those little fragments off, and when steel gets wet, it rusts. When it rusts, it leaves all these little rust marks on your wood. Never use steel wool on an exterior wood surface. The other myth out there is that your door has to be off for days while it's being refinished. Well, again, that's just not true. I think it's a good idea to take your door off and lay it on a sawhorse when you are refinishing it. But if you know how to do it right, that door should be back up that night and lockable, even if it's not finished. Okay, and then when it's drying, when you have finish on it, again, it should be up. You don't have to keep taking the door on and off. It's just not true advice. Okay, the last myth I wanted to dispel is using a belt sander. You'll see on some of these internet videos, YouTube videos, people just take a belt sander and sand off that finish to get the job done quicker. Next point, I'm going to show you why that's one of the worst things you can do. You can ruin your door in a matter of seconds with a belt sander if you don't know what you're doing, unless you've taken my professional series and you know how to do that right. Okay, the second point the second worst thing you can do when you're refinishing your door is sanding through the veneer. Now, most doors, the most common door in the United States is a door that's straight grain, vertical fur, veneer. So if you have a door that has these tight grain patterns in it, you probably have this. Now I want you to see this from the end. This is 1/64 of an inch thick. That's the thickness of cardstock. Now, back to the first point. Do you know how fast you can burn through that with a belt sander? I'll tell you right now, it's a matter of seconds. It only takes a few seconds to totally ruin your door. And like I said, you're going to have to paint it then because the veneer is going to be gone. When you burn through the veneer, it looks like this. The grain is gone, and you'll see a color behind it that's different than the grain. And if you go through it all the way, you're going to see even backer boards behind that. All right? So you don't want that. How can you prevent that? How can you prevent this mistake of going through your veneer? Okay, so you want to prevent it. So what you do is you get up on a ladder before your door is even off the hinges, and you look down on the long pieces that go from the top to the bottom. And what you're going to see is something like this. You're going to see, now there's that thin veneer. See how thin that is? You can barely see it. You're going to see a board at the end, right, where the latch is, and you're going to see some sort of material in the middle. This may be many smaller boards, or it may just be one board. It may even be a piece of wood that has grain similar, but not identical to that veneer. All right, so now we know about that. Okay, the third worst mistake you can make is touching up instead of refinishing. Now, when you see on your door where the seams come together, you see these watermarks, it's time to refinish. That means take all the finish off. Touching up just means putting another coat back on it again. What happens when you get these watermarks is the grain is actually cupping and the finish is cupping. And if you just go over that real lightly with a sanding pad or something like that, it's still going to be cupped. So what that means is that's going to be very susceptible to movement, and you're going to get cracks again, and water's going to get in, and it's going to get worse, all right? You don't want that to happen. The fourth worst mistake you can make is not protecting your horizontal surfaces like the concrete on your porch or rocks. Listen, if you have flagstone or some sort of rock on your entryway and you spill oil on that, you're not going to get it off. You put paint thinner on it, it's just going to spread it around, and if it's a big one, if it's a little drop, you know, it's not a problem. But believe me, Murphy is at work here, and if you have not protected your surface, you will spill. The second thing I want to mention is, along that lines, is these vinyl coverings that people are putting on concrete porches to make them look like stone. Now these are latex. If you spill oil on latex, it's impossible to get it up. There's a good chance you'll have to redo that or pay a professional a lot of money to come out and repair that area. So please, I put down 2 layers of plastic and I tape the edges. Don't make this mistake. The worst mistake you can make, the last mistake, which most people make, is waiting too long. Now, when you wait too long, you're going to get something like this. And what happens is the material, the finish has failed so badly that wood has turned dark. This can even happen just on the moldings before this happens on the flat surfaces. But what happens when you sand that off, you're going to get something like this. It's still, see that? You still can't get all that dark out, especially when you have this veneer. You don't have very far to go, so you're never going to get that door back to where it was originally. And if you let it go too long, you're going to end up with something like this where you have rot on your door. And you certainly then at that point have to look at replacing your entryway, which is very costly.